All right, further on cash flow, and as we talked in an earlier session, cash flow is king. We've really got to manage our cash flow to make sure our business is not only profitable but survives. Because as I've said, I've seen a lot of businesses over the years who, whilst they're very profitable, end up going broke because their cash flow runs out. I'll give you a really, really good example here of what happens when your business grows too quickly. And this happened to one of our customers 10 years ago, actually probably 12 years ago. And it was really interesting lesson for this young bloke. He'd set up a transport business. So what we do is, just to give you a model on this, what we've got is we've got time here and we've got dollars there. And what happens, he was running his transport business and doing a really good job, managing it really well as far as operationally. So he had the right trucks, he had the right service offering, he had the right drivers, he had right customers and all that sort of stuff. What he was doing is he was growing like that. So every month would come along and he'd buy a new truck and he'd put a new driver in it and he'd get a new fuel card for that truck and he'd insure that truck. So what would happen is that each month he had to pay the finance costs on the truck, he had to pay the driver each week, he had to pay his fuel costs 21 days, he had to pay his insurance up front. So he had all these costs being loaded onto his business. All these costs being loaded onto his business when he put a new truck on. And his cash flow, he started, even though he was very profitable, he was making an absolute fortune on paper. It wasn't coming into his bank account. So at this point, pick a point, he ran out of cash. And he said to me, what do I do? So what we decided to do with him, we changed his strategy. And he said, okay, what you're doing is you're just putting, every month you're putting another truck on, because his customer was paying him on 45 to 60 days. He had one major customer and they were taking 45 to 60 days to pay him. So he was wearing between 6 and 8 weeks of expenses on these trucks before he received $1 from his customer. What I said to him was that we would stop buying trucks and we would only start putting trucks on in 6 to 8 week periods after we'd caught up. So effectively what we did is we changed his growth pattern so that went like that, we paused, went like that, paused, went like that, paused, and so on. So instead of going up a slippery slope, we actually stepped the growth of his business. Now at that point, when he had run out of cash, business very profitable, but run out of cash, what we did then is we said, right, no more trucks, none at all. And he stopped, credit to him. What happened when he started this, he was minus $200,000 in the bank. So he was fully up to his overdraft limit. He couldn't get another cent from anywhere. We stopped him and 6 weeks later, 6 weeks, his bank account had gone from minus 200,000 to positive 400,000 in 6 weeks. Purely and simply because he stopped growing and he let, on this model, he let his cash flow catch up. So when you look at cash flow, you can say, okay, we've got all this opportunity to grow the business. What's going to happen when we do grow the business? And what's going to happen not only to our profit, but most importantly, to our cash flow? So do we just keep growing at a very linear rate, exponential rate, or do we actually grow in a far more steady method? And you'll find that when you grow in this method, you've got far less chance of running out of cash. And as we showed with this customer all those years ago, he went from 200,000 overdrawn to 400,000 positive in the bank, a $600,000 turnaround in 6 weeks. What had we done to change his business? We'd stopped it growing for a period. And that's the power of cash flow that you really need to understand, because it will make an incredible difference and it will mean the difference between you sleeping at night and not.